most important, who can stop him?
That would be me.
He's young, he'll walk again. But you'll stay scared, won't you, punk?
We'll never be. God.
No, it's cool. It's cool.
When they come, I'll make them tell me where Sarah is. After that,
Hyena, first introduced in Legends of the Dark Claw #1 from 1996, is a combination of DC's The Joker and Marvel's Sabretooth. He is the archenemy of Darkclaw, a combination of DC's Batman and Marvel's Wolverine. His real name is Creed Harley Quinn. The Canadian government initiated the Weapon X project. Logan and Quinn of the RCAF were both accepted as candidates for the project, along with 4 other volunteers. Logan's latent metamutant healing factor kicks in, which allows him to survive the adamantium crafting process, and Creed survives as well, but becomes a remorseless killing machine, exactly what the project was hoping for. Creed's sanity does not fare as well, and he eventually goes rogue, because of course he's going to. And Indestructible, known as adamantium, was also bonded to Creed's skeleton as well as Logan's, and he was given claws made of the same substance. Unlike Darkclaw, however, Creed was physically deformed as a result of the experiment and went insane. Project X also triggered metamutant abilities in Creed, who became known as Hyena. Hyena, also known as the Cackling Canine, will not stop his maniacal grinning until his arch nemesis Darkclaw is destroyed. He also has a gang called the Pack, which is actually kinda cute, but still terrifying. And at 9, Martha Wayne. When Barry Allen altered the timeline so that his mother lived, a lot changed, along with Martha Wayne. She had initially been the mother to Bruce Wayne, who would have become Batman when she was killed in the alleyway by Joe Chill, but Barry's mom surviving somehow resulted in her and her husband, Thomas Wayne, surviving Joe Chill's fateful ambush, but their son dying as a result. Butterfly effect, I guess. This ultimately broke her, driving her completely insane from grief and having her adopt the identity of the Joker, as well as committing various crimes in Gotham, also resulting in Thomas becoming a vigilante known as Batman in an attempt to stop her. By the time of the Flashpoint saga, she had kidnapped the twin sons of Harvey Dent without leaving a ransom note, and then, at her hideout in Wayne Manor, manipulated Commissioner Gordon into shooting the daughter by dressing her up in a Joker outfit, and then murdered the Commissioner. Eventually, Batman arrived and she had proceeded to bludgeon her former husband with a hammer, an action that Batman willingly endured for a chance at getting a glimpse of the remaining psyche of his former wife. Ultimately, he managed to temporarily get through to her and revealed that they may have a chance of actually undoing the events that happened, although it may result in her deaths. She accepted though, because she wanted her son to live, but apparently not become Batman. And at 8, Suicide Squad. The Joker is an infamously extreme and formidable psychopathic crime lord in Gotham City in this movie, being at the very top of the city's criminal underworld, greatly feared by all those other crime bosses and criminals. Though he is devoid of empathy or pity for anybody taking part in his wicked schemes, either by intimidation or fraud, the Joker used to adore his on-again off-again girlfriend and partner in crime Harley Quinn, doing his utmost to rescue her from Task Force X and the clutches of Amanda Waller, with eventual success. I mean, like, he was in the movie for like 5 minutes total, but like, it's better than nothing, right? For unknown reasons though, he later broke up with Harley, leaving her on her own and the target of many of his enemies. This version from the DCEU was certainly a darker and more brutal Joker than what we've been seeing in the comics now, not relying on Batman and being more willing to kill like he was in the golden age of comics, much along the lines of the 3 Joker revelation from the Mobius chair, since this version also killed Robin in the DCEU prior to the events of the movie. However, some also believe that the Joker is a mentally unstable version of Robin, which could be revealed to be true, but I don't know if they're actually going to reveal it and just let it be a theory. And yes, I was doing this to show the mask multiple times. And at 7, Emperor Joker. Emperor Joker was the form the Joker took after tricking Mr. Mitzi's Pitalik into donating 99.99% of his powers to the Joker. He gave him 99.99% of his powers accidentally. As a direct result, he became near omnipotent and created a hellish world in his own image. At some point, the imp from the 5th dimension, Mr. Mitzi's Pitalik, attempted to see what a member of the regular realm would do with his power and selected the Joker. He intended on only donating 1% of his power to the Joker, but the Mad Clown tricked him into revealing his true name and thus ended up gaining 99.99% of the powers, and proceeded to transform existence within 69 seconds. nice, into a realm made in his own image, which was a twisted caricature, and with everyone stuck in a loop. Emperor Joker continually tortured and killed Batman every single day, only to bring him back to life and do it all over again. As could be expected, Emperor Joker took pride in these particular killings due to the unique relationship the two characters continued to share. Although this relationship is also the Joker's undoing, since he was still defined by being the Batman's antagonist, and he was beaten by a dog of all things. Okay, well, it was Superman as a dog, but still. Joker with near absolute power? No thanks. And at 6, Batman Two-Faces. Batman Two-Faces is the DC equivalent to the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde story, where ironically, Harvey Dent, also known as Two-Face, isn't the one with the Hyde affliction, but rather Batman himself is. It's the year 1886. Bruce Wayne is organizing a gala to exhibit the Twilight Orchid, a rare flower with unique characteristics. During the day, the flower is exquisitely colored and perfumed and attracts a large amount of insects. At night, however, it turns into a weed, attracting only pests. I know a few people like that. Miss Pamela Isley, Bruce Wayne, Commissioner Gordon, and many of Gotham's finest attend the gala where Two-Face storms in and steals the flower. Bruce reveals that he had hoped to actually create a potion derived from the flower, which was retrieved from Miss Isley's dead hands. A potion which would cure Two-Face from his dual personality. Finalizing the potion, Bruce tests it on himself. He suddenly develops superhuman strength, agility, and a new sense of courage and purpose. He puts together a costume and sets off to battle crime on Two-Face's terms. However, this potion didn't only give him powers, it gave him another personality. The personality of the Joker. Yeah, that's right. In Batman Two-Faces, Bruce Wayne is the Joker, which is pretty frightening for sure. Halfway through into number 5, Batman Bloodstorm. At one point, Gotham City was attacked by a group of vampires led by Dracula. However, the vampires were defeated by Batman, who would become part vampire in the struggle. The Joker later lured the surviving vampires out of their underground lair and convinced them to allow him to be their new leader. The vampires accepted, and the Joker appointed a vampire named Creech to be his second in command. The Joker and his new gang then set out to conquer Gotham's underworld. Their first target was Cardona. The vampires ambushed Cardona and his thugs at their hideout, drank their blood, and transformed them into Night Stalkers like themselves. But yeah, you heard that right. The Joker of Earth 43 is Batman's archenemy, and a non-vampire leading a pack of vampires through fear. The ability to lead a group of vampires through fear is absolutely nuts, because like in every incarnation, vampires aren't really afraid of anything, aside from maybe other vampires or like steaks. Like nice medium steaks. That was a bad joke. You know what I mean, right? Like this is, how crazy is this version of the Joker to try to do that? I don't know. Like holy damn, or I guess unholy damn. Let's go on. And at 4, Dark Knight Returns. Like most incarnations, this Joker is a psychopathic mass murderer who is Batman's archenemy. Following Batman's retirement though, he gets confined to Arkham Asylum and falls into a catatonic state. But when Batman returns 10 years later, he comes back as well for a final showdown with the Dark Knight. It's unknown how he knows that he's back, but he just wakes up. The final showdown between the two ends in the Tunnel of Love, in which Joker hysterically stabs Batman in the stomach several times. But mid-stab, Batman instinctively breaks the Joker's neck just enough to paralyze him, but not kill him. Joker encourages Batman to finish him off, but Batman won't do it. So the Joker then finally says, "See you in hell," before, in a last act of revenge against his enemy, twists his own neck just far enough to kill himself, and framing his enemy for his own murder. Isn't that wonderful? That's freaking nuts. Who snaps their own neck to frame a guy? Okay? This is one of the freakiest scenes in all of comics. Like, what the living hell? And at 3, A Serious House. In the world of Arkham Asylum, a serious house on a serious Earth, the inmates of Arkham Asylum have taken over and seized control of the staff. They're willing to release the hostages, but only if their one demand is met. Batman must be turned over to them and become one of their own. Commissioner Gordon informs Batman that the patients of Arkham Asylum have taken over the building and will kill the staff unless Batman agrees to meet with them, and the patients are of course led by the Joker, who kills a guard to spur Batman to obey his wishes. Two-Face meanwhile has degenerated even further into madness, and Batman is forced into a game of hide and seek, and told he has 1 hour to make his way through the maze-like corridors of Arkham and find a way out before his old foes are sent after him. Yep, yeah. The fact that Joker is just leading a whole gang of prisoners who have taken over Arkham is absolutely insane. And then the art style of this comic makes it one of the freakiest depictions of the Joker to date. Like, you've been seeing it. It's nuts. Penultimately, in at number 2, The Batman Who Laughs. The story of Batman of Earth 22 was not much different from that of any other version of the Caped Crusader. When he was a boy, Bruce Wayne watched his parents get murdered in an alley, vowing vengeance against crime. So he trained for years and became the hero Batman, fighting supervillains in Gotham City. Everything went sideways though when Joker started a killing spree across Gotham. The clown had discovered that he was dying from the same chemicals that had turned him into what he was, and wanted to make everyone die with him. He killed all of Batman's enemies, including the Penguin, Catwoman, Killer Croc, the Ventriloquist, a lot. Joker also killed Commissioner Gordon, who accidentally sprung an acid trap on his notebook and it melted his face off. After bombing a hospital and recreating the scene of Bruce's parents killing in front of him multiple times, Batman lost control and broke the Joker's neck. Unbeknownst to Batman though, the Joker exhaled a toxin contained in his heart, which infected anyone close to him if he died. In this case, it was Batman. This caused him to snap and basically become the new Joker, taking over Earth 32 and later on, gaining cosmic power. Yeah, cosmic power. Joker. But also Batman. No thanks. And finally, in at number 1, Death of the Family. When the Joker became obsessed over destroying the Bat family, he decided to arrange for his face to be surgically removed. According to the Joker, he did this to symbolize that even without his mask, he was still the Joker, whereas Batman, Robin, and Batgirl's identities were only mask deep. To see this through, Joker arranged for the serial killer known as the Dollmaker to remove his face surgically in Arkham Asylum. The Dollmaker sent his, son to do the procedure though, only for the Joker to kill him by tearing out his throat with his teeth. Dollmaker later went on to actually remove his face, since Joker refused to do it any other way, but the two actually arranged to celebrate his rebirth before leaving the clown's face on the cell wall for Batman to find. Joker would later use straps, clips, and pins to retrofit the flesh back onto his face in a form of mask, which he wore over his now exposed tendons, hiding the way he looked, because honestly that might have been a little too much. Joker would also remain in this mask for the remainder of his plan to destroy the Bat family, a mission which ended in a dinner party in the Batcave. And I think it's fairly obvious why this is number 1. Even without cosmic power, a man getting his face removed only to turn it into a mask to wear it again? No thank you. Not to mention that this is also the face that Joker's daughter ends up wearing, I'm pretty sure. So, no. And at 10, Earth NR. On Earth NR, Johann Schmidt is the illegitimate son of Adolf, you know the one, who trained him to be one of his best generals. However, the man known as the Red Skull was considered dangerous even to him being Adolf. So when he tried to have him assassinated, the Red Skull retaliated by killing him in 1951. Red Skull then became the leader of the fascist regime until his death in 1984 at the hands of Punished Snake. Earth NR is also certainly an interesting Earth, since Mar-Vell, the original Captain Marvel, air quotes, is the son of Nora Kramir and Nar-Vell, Kryptonian scientists that worked alongside the parents of Superman and are referred to as Kree, which is a slang term for Kryptonian. So apparently, some of these characters are combinations of DC heroes as well as Marvel heroes, but like they're not a part of the separate amalgam universe. I don't know, that was interesting to me.
Number 9, Cynthia Sin Schmidt. Sin is the daughter of Red Skull, who for a time also adopted her father's mantle. She isn't an alternate in the way of being from an alternate reality, but she is an alternate version of the Red Skull mantle. Her mother was a nameless washerwoman whom Red Skull had really no ties to himself, but simply used in an attempt to get an heir, disappointed when the child that they bore was born a girl. When she first rose to prominence, she greatly resembled her father's appearance, also boasting of a skeletal looking Red Skull face herself, which she actually got as a result of a fight with Bucky Barnes. During the Fear Itself story arc, she became one of the Serpent's chosen warriors, Scotty. Since then, however, her appearance has changed in the comics to the point that those who remember her from Fear Itself might not even recognize her anymore, although this was her original appearance in the sense of what she originally looked like. Cynthia now goes by the mantle of Sin and is looking much less frightening currently in comic continuity. Still, I don't think she's someone you would want to mess with, hence why she makes her cut.
In at 8, Earth 92-131. Earth 92131, also known as the Spider-Man 90s animated universe, Red Skull was obsessed with creating and controlling a doomsday weapon that he had a German scientist build build for him under New York City. After numerous battles with Captain America and the 6 American warriors, he and Cap became trapped in a vortex for 50 years. After those 50 years, the Red Skull's son, Reichenvolt Kragoff, freed him from the vortex, and they found the Doomsday weapon and used it on Reinhold, which made him become Electro. After Electro betrayed the Red Skull, he tricked Spider-Man and Captain America into fixing the vortex in order to capture Electro. And after a battle, both Cap and the Skull were trapped in the vortex yet again. But he was later freed by the Beyonder to be a part of the Secret Wars. He recruited Alistair Smythe and Dr. Octopus to help him in his bid to conquer Battle World, and he absolutely decimated the planet. So yeah, I mean, he's a pretty bad dude. He was also returned to Earth by Doctor Doom with no memory of the events when Doom had stole the Beyonder's powers, but that means that he was free on Earth, which the animation couldn't continue to look into because it ended, unfortunately, like 3 episodes later. Anyway, he was also the adopted father of Chameleon, and then he turned his biological son into Electro, so that's some pretty serious villain juice, especially for an animated Saturday cartoon villain.
Number 7. Golden Skull. Golden Skull is from the alternate future of Earth 15061. His true identity remains unknown, although it was rumored that he was the son of another alternate Red Skull known as the Green Skull. If this is true, it's believed that he became the Golden Skull out of rebellion against his father and everything that he believed in. Golden Skull was known for being a recurring enemy and villain to Daniel Cage, the daughter of Luke Cage and Jessica Jones, and the all-grown-up alternate future version of Captain America. As his name implies, Golden Skull himself was obsessed with wealth, acting like the most capitalist version of the Red Skull. At one time, he traveled to the past, where his plan was actually to take control of the entirety of Earth's economy. Pretty big plan.
And at 6, a new future. On Earth 71500, Johann Schmidt, also known as the Red Skull, was at some point the leader of Hydra, obviously, but after Cap reached Hydra's headquarters and destroyed it, the two fought hard and they were both knocked out and frozen by Hydra. However, Natalia Romanova, the Black Widow of this reality, is also a member of the Avengers and Hydra. Natalia fought along with the other members of the Fantastic Four and the Avengers against Nathaniel Von Doom and his army, but she was badly injured by Sabretooth and Juggernaut. She recovered from this injury at a time where the current president was resigning and a new president was needed. So she went to the secret Hydra base where both Captain America and the Red Skull were kept frozen, and she woke up Red Skull with a plan that she had managed to create when the current president resigned. And since Red Skull wanted to win the election, he disguised himself as Captain America. Yeah, you heard that right. On Earth 71500, Captain America is actually the Red Skull and started running for president under the guise of Captain America, someone that every American could trust. Yeah, I'm sure you can figure out how that turned out.
Number 5. White Skull. There have actually been a few White Skulls, but for the purpose of this list, I'll be talking about Colonel Bucky Barnes from the alternate reality of Earth 717. In this reality, we learn of what would happen if Captain America had lived during the American Civil War. Bucky himself becomes a villain in this universe, being a corrupt leader of the Union Red Legs Regiment, where soldier Stephen Rogers served. While tracking down Stephen, Buck interrupts an indigenous ritual meant to heal and transform Stephen Rogers. As a result, the skin on Colonel Barnes' face was burned off, revealing his white skull underneath, which is supposed to be symbolism, I think, for the fact that he's racist. Surviving the incident, Colonel Barnes would become the White Skull, the sworn enemy of Stephen Rogers, Captain America.
In 4, Captain Skull. Imagine a Captain America, but a fascist version. And not one that secretly works for Hydra, but literally one that is branded with fascist symbols and a black, white, and red color scheme instead of the classic all-American red, white, and blue. That's basically what Captain Skull is from Earth 613. This guy is literally just Captain Fascism, and that certainly seems scary to me. In fact, here's a quote from a version of Red Skull. I don't think it's this version, but it's still a quote nonetheless. "Ah, my dear Captain, now you see who is stronger of us both. It is too bad that a symbol of freedom had to perish to see it. It is also too bad that I was insincere in that sentiment." Cause like, okay, so really that could just be a quote from the normal Red Skull, but hey, it fits this version well. While not much is known about this version of the character, it's certainly something that I personally believe that we should be afraid of.
Number 3. Ultimate Red Skull. In the reality of Earth 1610, known as the Ultimate Universe, Red Skull is actually the son of Captain America, Stephen Rogers, and his then girlfriend Gail Richards. While Captain America went MIA and was later declared dead, Gail was encouraged by the military to give up their baby and would end up marrying Stephen's best friend Bucky, after Stephen went missing, obviously. Gail and Stephen's child would be raised by the government and the military, who planned to have him become the new Captain America eventually. Unfortunately, it turns out out that raising a baby in a military base to become his long-gone heroic father maybe isn't such a great idea. At the age of 17, the young man escaped and rebelled against his father's image, took a knife and cut the skin from his face, becoming the brilliant and evil villain known as the Red Skull. The really tragic thing is that Red Skull, while acquiring the Cosmic Cube and being captured before he could use it in this reality, revealed that the only reason that he'd wanted it to begin with was so that he could turn back time and prevent his father from being lost in the war, allowing him to grow up with a family and have a chance at a normal life with both his parents present. Not only is Red Skull of the Ultimate Universe terrifying, but he's also quite tragic as well.
Penultimately, in at number 2, Green Skull. Green Skull, aka Lex Luthor, is the amalgam of Marvel Comics Red Skull and DC Comics Lex Luthor. I mean, like, I'm guessing you could probably figure that based on his name and the title of this list. In the 1940s, Lex Luthor is a renowned entrepreneur and philanthropist who resides in Metropolis. He was married to Lois Lane, a war correspondent whom he met at a charity ball. Widely considered to be a model citizen and contributor to society, Luthor is also personal friends with high-ranking political figures such as Winston Churchill and President Franklin Roosevelt. Only Super Soldier, a World War II era superhero created by the US government, sees through his facade and knows that Luthor is actually a corrupt war profiteer who is aiding the fascist party in an effort to prolong the war. While looking into the secret government project that created Super Soldier, Luthor learns of an alien craft that landed in Kansas and carried a radioactive ore known as Green K, or the Kansas Load. I guess you can see where this is going. It's fucking kryptonite. In 1938, he arranged for fascist scientists to steal the ship and its cargo for him. Observing that the green meteorite weakens Super Soldier, Luthor creates a serum from it, which he then promptly injects himself with. The result greatly extends his own lifespan, but inadvertently turns him into the Green Skull. So in essence, he tried to make himself walking kryptonite and got boned because of it. No pun intended, because you know, he's the skull. Skull is a bone. He got boned.
Number 1. Red Onslaught. Red Onslaught might seem like he's part of the main continuity for the character, and well, I mean, he sort of is, but even he is not the original Red Skull, as the original Johann Schmidt died long ago. Instead, Red Onslaught was actually born out of a clone version of the original Red Skull. So many clones, so little time. So even before he became Red Onslaught, he was technically an alternate version of sorts. This clone of Red Skull would go on to steal Professor X's brain after he was killed by Cyclops in Avengers vs. X-Men. This would begin his journey towards becoming Red Onslaught, where Red Skull would then become merged with Onslaught via Professor X's brain. This basically all came about because Red Skull turned Genosha into a place where he enslaved and abducted both Inhumans and mutants. This obviously provoked Magneto, who attempted to kill Red Skull, but instead awoke a more powerful persona residing within him, Onslaught, thereby creating Red Onslaught. In order to defeat this devastating and deadly form, Scarlet Witch then cast a spell attempting to reverse the alignment of Red Onslaught, which worked, but kinda accidentally resulted in the Axis event, where various heroes and villains had their alignments flipped. So, you know, solve one problem, create a bunch more. It's kinda how Wanda does, unfortunately. Number 10. Crusader. Crusader is the daughter of X-Men team member Rogue and Avenger Captain America. I know, a weird combination. But in the reality of Earth 9811, these two ended up together after the heroes and villains on Battleworld decided to call a truce. Remaining there, they settled down and raised families, putting their differences aside. I'm not sure how their relationship worked, with Rogue not really being able to touch people and all at this point, or how she had a child considering that, but perhaps, like on Earth 616, she eventually was able to work through the trauma causing this side effect of her powers. Or perhaps the Captain America of Earth 9811 was immune to her involuntary energy and power draining effects. Either way, Sarah is their daughter. She gets much of her power from her mother, or rather she gets much of her power from the power her mother had absorbed in her day, meaning that Sarah is super strong, durable, and can fly. She is also considered worthy enough to lift Thor's hammer and wields her father's shield. Number 9. Wolverine. I really wanted to put Laura Kinney higher up on this list because, well, I love her so much, but unfortunately the psionics are just always pushing some of my favorite and most powerful characters further down on these lists. Those psionics. Oh well. Laura Kinney as X-23 and now Wolverine is still one of the most powerful children of the X-Men around. Some argue that she is more clone, while others argue that she is more biological offspring of Logan, but in reality, she's kind of a bit of both. She was created as a female clone of Wolverine after his genetic material was combined with that of her creator, scientist Sarah Kinney. Sarah noticed that there were damage spots basically in the samples of Logan's genetic material that they had, which was why their cloning process had been unsuccessful successful up to this point, and so she used her own genetic material to patch those rough spots, which made Laura a female clone. Sarah was forced to carry Laura to term as a surrogate by her jealous colleague Xander Rice, as punishment for even creating the female clone to begin with, a strategy that admittedly had not been approved. Laura has powers similar to her father. She has a regenerative healing factor and was also trained from birth to be a skilled fighter, bodyguard, and assassin. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to learn about more Children of the X-Men, there are a lot out there in the multiverse. Be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Chimera. Chimera is the daughter of Storm and likely Black Panther, who hails from the alternate reality of 13729. Yeah, sadly Storm and T'Challa have never had a child together in the main continuity. I know, it's a bit of a bummer. Unless they had like a real secret child that we just don't know about yet, but I doubt it. Chimera seems to have inherited the powers of her mother, but also shares a connection to the Earth, which allows her to draw on and harness its energy. She is also a skilled tracker and can communicate telepathically with animals. I'd also assume, as she's the daughter of Storm, that she's a skilled combatant as well. As while Storm is more well known for her goddess status and weather manipulation powers, she is also an extremely skilled fighter. And if she's Black Panther's daughter, then she should definitely be a skilled fighter. I mean, you got two amazing parents that are both amazing fighters, so just saying. Number 7. Charles Xavier II. Charles Xavier II is the son of Charles Xavier and Mystique, if you can believe that. I know, it's pretty shocking. Charles Xavier II was technically born into the reality of Earth 616, where we later find out that while Mystique actually took the form of Moira when giving birth, Charles actually knew that he was in a relationship with Raven, so it wasn't like a trick of hers. They were actually just wanted to be together, I guess. This version of Charles, however, is an all grown up one from the alternate future of Earth 13729. When his powers first manifested, he accidentally killed his adoptive mother and ended up later joining forces with his half-brother Reyes, another child of Mystique's sired by Wolverine, another child of the X-Men. Charles Xavier II has a brilliant and conniving mind, and like his father, is an immensely gifted telepath, capable of using his powers to bend others to his will. Number 6. Polaris. Polaris is the daughter of Magneto, and while you might not think of Magneto as being an X-Men, considering, you know, he started out as an X-Men villain, he has also worked with the team before and even served as a member himself. Heck, at one point he was in charge of the whole New Mutants crew, let's not forget that. Magneto may have some questionable methods when it comes to getting justice that put him on the spectrum of villain, but I think at the end of the day, he's just trying to do what's best for mutants. Or at least what he thinks is best for mutant kind. Polaris, like her father, also has magnetic-based powers, which, like her father, are also pretty impressive. Polaris is considered an alpha level mutant and recently got to join the X-Men team herself after being elected to join them in the Krakoan X-Men elections. Psychic elections. Imagine if we could all just vote psychically. That would be awesome. That would be so much easier. You would just like sit down and you'd be like, who do I want to vote for? Done. Number 5. Cable. Cable is the son of Scott Summers, aka Cyclops, non-X member Madeline Pryor, who later becomes the villain known as the Goblin Queen, and another X-Man's, Jean Grey, who kind of becomes like an adoptive mother but who also possesses Madeline's memories of raising baby Christopher. Because comics. Cable is Nathan Christopher Charles Summers, often referred to as just Nathan Summers or really just Cable, although back in the day we did know him as Baby Christopher. Cable as a baby was kidnapped by Apocalypse and infected with the techno-organic virus. This is the only thing that makes him weak-ish, but really he is still amazingly strong, as he can even fend off that virus, containing it to one side of his body using his psionic powers. That in and of itself is pretty impressive, as the techno-organic virus is generally known for being, well, unstoppable. Even with his psionic powers mainly preoccupied, Cable is still a hard one to beat, as he has so many combatant-based skills that he brings to the table, and he is also an experienced time traveler besides. Number 4. Rachel Summers. Yes, get ready, because many of the most powerful X-Kids out there just happen to be Summers related, so yeah, get ready for that. Honestly, I've always wanted to do a video just to explain the complicated nature that is the Summers and Grey family tree, which honestly is a lot, and it's very timey-wimey. Rachel herself is one of those very complex kids of theirs. She is the daughter of Jean Grey and Scott Summers from the alternate Earth of 811. In that reality, she was made into a hound, a weapon used to hunt down mutants, even being one herself. Rachel is an extremely powerful telepath and telekinetic who also has the ability to chronoskim and manipulate time, even traveling through it. Rachel is also known for being an avatar of the Phoenix, at one time actually considered the true avatar for it, but then later having the power sort of dialed down to a mere echo of it. So she was no longer the true avatar. They were just like, you just have a thing, and it's not even like the real Phoenix Force, but it's like a version of it. Still, the seeming piece or echo of the Phoenix Force that resides within her has been known to flare up from time to time, or her connection to the Phoenix Force, however we want to see that, occasionally boosting Rachel to an off-the-charts level of power. But like I said, that doesn't happen all the time. Number 3. Hope Summers. Hope is the adopted daughter of Cable, who was originally known as the Mutant Messiah Baby. Cable saved Hope from Bishop, who basically wanted to destroy her. In Bishop's reality, the Mutant Messiah would end up causing the event that led to the oppression and persecution of mutants. However, in Cable's reality, the Mutant Messiah would grow up to become a savior, so you can see why these two were opposed on this topic. For the X-Men of Earth 616, the Mutant Messiah was the first new mutant to have been born since basically M-Day, and so she brought hope to the mutants of the 616 reality. Cable body slided with Hope to another time to raise her in safety. He would end up naming Hope after her adoptive mother, his love who died, Hope, and she got the Summers name from Cable himself. But although she looks a lot like Jean, she actually has no biological relation to the Summers or the Grey families, at least not that we know of. Hope's mutant abilities allow her to copy the powers of anyone within a certain range. Hope also gains access to these powers without struggling at all to use them, receiving them basically at their peak level and with the auto knowledge basically of how to use them. So if you're like, oh, she's gotta like figure it out, no, she's just like instant god mode with those powers basically. Number 2. Scarlet Witch. Wanda is known for being one of the most powerful beings in the Marvel Universe. She has used her powers to completely warp reality the world over, and her chaos magic has pulled off other immensely world-changing feats, such as flipping the alignment of all major heroes and villains in the comics during the events of Axis. Initially, her chaos magic powers were believed to be somewhat mutant in origin. In fact, they were kind of presented initially as like Jinx-like mystical mutant abilities during her first appearances. However, we've since learned that both Wanda and her superpowered brother Pietro, aka Quicksilver, were never really mutants at all, nor were they related to Magneto. However, they still spent a good amount of their life around Magneto, who secretly believed them to be his children, and then another good amount of time thinking that he was their actual father, until it was revealed that this was all due to manipulation by the High Evolutionary. High Evolutionary just coming in and messing pretty much everybody up when it comes to their backstories and origins. Wanda herself has never really gotten along with the X-Men, especially since the events of M-Day, but she is still considered, I think, a part of Magneto's family, and a powerful one at that, regardless of her status as a mutant or a non-mutant. I know there are some people out there that want to be like, it never happened, but like, they still spent a lot of time together thinking that they were family, so I think we can still count it, friends. Also, make Wanda a mutant again. Do it. Make it happen. Give me Wanda and Quicksilver back. Number 1. X-Man. X-Man is Nathaniel Grey, the lab-born child made by combining the genetic materials of both Jean Grey and Cyclops. So basically like Cable, but if he had been made perfectly by villain Mr. Sinister. He actually hails from the alternate reality of AOA, Age of Apocalypse, Earth 295. Here, Sinister created him to use as his own weapon, but of course, Nate being so powerful, managed to escape Sinister and instead ended up being raised by Forge of Earth 295. He is considered one of the most powerful mutants of all time, which would also make him one of the most powerful children of the X-Men out there. Nate can warp reality, resurrect the dead, resurrect himself, travel to alternate Earths and dimensions, and even manipulate the time stream. He is basically the most OP of characters when it comes to the Marvel Universe. And if you've seen artwork of him, you will probably recognize him as someone who looks like Mutant Jesus, which yes, he is god level, so that is the point.
In a 10 Reverse Flash. Now I know what you're thinking, but isn't Eobard known as the villain Reverse Flash? But he's a villain, he's not Barry. Okay, look, alright, I get it. In the main continuity, yes, but in the dark multiverse Flashpoint story, Eobard actually becomes the Flash, and he kind of became his own form of hero in a way, like a dark, twisted, messed up hero hellbent on eradicating the human race and just subjugating all superheroes to his will, but hey, that's still kind of a hero, right? Technically it counts. And I mean, like, he's still scary and another version of the Flash, so yes, it does. This is a universe where Barry Allen dies while trying to get his powers back with Flashpoint Batman, aka Thomas Wayne. But he dies, and the Reverse Flash kind of takes his place. But once he tries to stop the war between Aquaman and Wonder Woman by threatening them and killing Arthur, you know that there's going to be some hell to pay. So he sets out on shaping the world into his own image. This involves preventing Batman from ever becoming Batman and instead creating his own superhero team full of versions of the characters we know and love, but all with Reverse Flash logos somewhere on their suits usually. And I have to say, preventing Batman from being created is probably the smartest thing that Eobard has ever done, or could have done in this situation, because either way, no matter who becomes Batman, Batman is always going to lead some form of resistance. So by eliminating Batman being created, you stopped just a resistance rising against you, so good on you. And at 9, Gorilla Grodd Flash. Grodd Friended Me is the 13th episode of the 6th season of The Flash, and is the 127th episode overall. In this episode, Grodd comes to Barry as a projection of Joe, and tells Barry that he is aware of his progressions made post-crisis. He asks Barry to assist him with getting to the Gorilla City that is now on Earth Prime, so he can at least be happy among his own kind, because currently he was locked up at Argus. Barry realizes that they have to try something new and overlook the past, and they need to work together to beat the Salivar that is in Grodd's mind. Barry and Grodd combine their brains briefly, giving Grodd super speed powers. Barry tells Team Flash what's going on, and Frost discovers that on the off chance that they don't end up separating their brains the exact moment that they escape, they're both going to die. While in the Mindscape though, Barry educates Grodd on how to utilize his speed against Salivar, and he succeeds with Barry's help. Barry awakens in reality, successfully disconnected from Grodd's mind. So yeah, a telepathic psychic gorilla with super speed after combining with the fastest man alive, yeah, that's gonna be a no for me, dog. Actually though, it was a pretty sick episode. And at 8, Speed Demon. Speed Demon, first introduced in Speed Demon number 1, is, aside from what your ex-girlfriends might have called you, a combination of Barry Allen and Johnny Blaze. Blaze Allen was a circus daredevil who sold his soul to become the first Speed Demon, and yes, there are multiple. The demon component Etrigan was actually formerly Jay Garrick before the Night Spectre stole Jay's soul. The Night Spectre approached Blaze and asked him to serve in his mission to collect the souls of the most pure and the most corrupt, which just sounds like a dream job to me, but whatever. Blaze Allen refused, so in an attempt to persuade him at his wedding, Night Spectre stole his wife's soul. He stole Iris's soul, yep. Blaze then accepted the bond, hoping to get Iris back or at least ensure her safety, but of course, he pulls back. That's not gonna happen, bro. Speed Demon speaks only in rhymes, but is a speedster with a flaming skull head that can also breathe hellfire. Wally West, an amalgam of Danny Ketch and obviously Wally West, was the next Speed Demon who accepted the power in order to help his uncle get Iris back. It's interesting because, like, I would give up my soul for super speed. Are you kidding me? And the ability to breathe fire? Speaking in rhymes is great. Yeah, that's right. You better not hate. And at 7, Mercury Flash. Mercury Flash is a robotic version of the Flash made by Doc Tornado as a member of his Metal League. The robot uses a mercury-based physiology, whatever that means, that can make it somehow able to channel the Speed Force, and like the actual Speed Force, not even a fake one. I don't understand how this man not only learned about the Speed Force, but was also able to replicate or siphon it off using mercury, but whatever. It's comics, okay? You don't really need an explanation as long as it helps the plot. First being introduced in the Multiversity Guidebook number 1 in March of 2015, this version of the Flash can do everything the normal Flash can do powers-wise, but because, you know, he's a robot, can't really do human activities, but he also has the added advantage of being a robot, so he doesn't really fear death. Not only is it in his code to not fear death, but he can also just be repaired. This version of the Flash hails from Earth 44, and I kinda really want to be him. No responsibilities, only running super fast and drinking motor oil. That's the dream. And at 6, Savitar. As a fan of the Arrowverse, I had to include this one, okay? He's one of the most interesting speedsters on the show. Savitar, while sharing a name with another evil speedster from the comics, is actually revealed to be a time remnant of Barry Allen, being more of a future Flash than actual Savitar. He's a combination of the two. His story is pretty messed up, in essence making himself to have a classic chicken and the egg scenario, as Cisco would put it, where he caused himself to be created. In the post-Flashpoint Arrowverse timeline, Savitar comes back from the future to kill Iris West before her and Barry get married. This causes Barry to create as many time remnants as possible in order to stop him, but Savitar kills them all except for one. The one that he spares ends up getting shunned by the rest of Team Flash for not being the real Barry Allen, even though he still technically is the real Barry. It's weird. So in an act of fury, the time remnant runs back in time, creating a new identity for himself as the first speedster and the god of speed called Savitar. And then he comes back. He burns his face at some point, and then he tries to kill what would have been his wife, and he like remembers everything. He's in love with her, but he still tries to kill her. Yeah, I don't get it, but it's still pretty damn scary. Halfway through into number 5, Black Lantern Reverse Flash. The Black Lantern Corps is a group of various dead superheroes and villains alike who were raised by Necron and each given a Black Lantern ring. This ring grants them power over death, and these rings are powered by the Anti-Monitor, as he is present within the Black Lantern power battery. Those raised by the Black Lantern ring are in essence resurrected to where they were were before death, but their mind is warped to serve Necron's purpose. Those with the ring have various powers, including a healing factor, oral recognition, which allows them to see powerful emotions, energy spectrum assimilation, which lets them extract the hearts of individuals that they've slain and then use their last feelings to charge the central battery and their ring by 0.1%, and they, much like zombies, can infect others by biting them. A bite from a Black Lantern will slowly kill the one bitten, and then would turn them into Black Lanterns upon death. Basically zombies with superpowers, in addition to being an evil speedster, so definitely not something that you should be trifling with. And at 4, Johnny Quick. Johnny Allen, also known as Johnny Quick, is a criminal speedster from Earth 3. Together with his girlfriend and partner in crime Atomica, he was a member of the crime syndicate. Johnny Allen was a high-profile criminal, on the run with his equally criminal girlfriend when he was cornered on the roof of Central City's Star Labs. Allen was struck by a bolt of lightning which shattered the roof, and the duo fell into the lab space below. With Allen landing amid the chemicals, something in this incident granted him super speed, and went on to become a powerful supercriminal alongside his girlfriend, who also had been empowered. While his girlfriend took the name Atomica, he took on the name Johnny Quick. And he ran through the city, answering to no one, until the day the White House burned. Around the time of Darkseid's incursion into Prime Earth, the being that had destroyed Ultraman's Krypton came to Earth, and an alliance of supercriminals formed to find a way to safety. Now my question is Johnny Quick the reason Johnny Quick became a speedster? There's the whole storyline where Barry Allen runs so fast that he disintegrates, but then he also time travels and becomes the bolt of lightning that gives him his powers. So technically, did that also happen to Johnny? Getting close to the end, in at number 3, Godspeed. August Hart is the former detective partner of Barry Allen. August was the only witness to Barry's accident that turned him into the Flash. While going after a criminal organization called the Black Hole, August was also struck by lightning during a Speed Force storm in Central City. So August became the ruthless vigilante known as Godspeed, and got revenge on the one who he suspected to be his brother's killer. He had given up on the justice system since his brother's killer had gone free, and with his newfound power and the ability to become judge, jury, and vibrating executioner, August realized that after he had gotten his powers that he also had the ability to steal other speedsters' speed. Though for a time he could only do it by killing them, he practiced the skill enough to be able to do it non-lethally as well. With his new godlike speed, August was able to move so fast as to create a duplicate of himself at any given time, allowing him to give the illusion that he and Godspeed were different people, which is pretty damn sick, considering the alternatives are Speed Mirage and Time Remnant, which aren't technically the same thing. Time Remnants just create evil versions of yourself, apparently. Penultimately, in at number 2, Black Flash. The actual physical representation of death for all speedsters, they just can't see this guy coming. Okay, well, they can, but you know what I mean. Black Flash is the Grim Reaper of the Speed Force. Making his first appearance in The Flash Volume 2, number 138 from 1998, he was seen before the deaths of several speedsters, including Barry Allen, Johnny Quick, and Bart Allen. He also tried to return Wally West to the Speed Force, however was unsuccessful, taking Linda Park instead, Wally's girlfriend, which after past experiences, Wally, I feel like he probably did you a favor. But since he was unsuccessful the first time, Black Flash returned to try to claim Wally again, freezing time for everyone without a connection to the Speed Force. But thanks to the combined efforts of multiple speedsters, including Max Mercury, Jay Garrick, Jesse Quick, and Wally, Wally was able to race Black Flash to the end of time, causing death to have no meaning. In the CW, Black Flash was Hunter Zolomon after the season 2 finale, and was killed during season 3 when Savitar lured him out of the Speed Force and Killer Frost froze him, resulting in her first kill that actually turned out to be her ex as well. Dare I say, ice cold. But that didn't stop the Speed Force anyway, since later Barry Allen returned in the Flash Rebirth storyline in the comics, becoming the new Black Flash, until Professor Zoom took over the title after his corpse was raised in the Darkest Night storyline. There's a lot of things going on. Finally, in at number 1, Red Death. Red Death is a speedster that is an evil combination of Batman and the Flash, which already sounds terrifying, but wait until you hear his story. The Bruce Wayne of Earth 52 started off fighting crime with Robin, but Robins kept dying left, right, and center, so understandably he got darker and darker, becoming more extreme with his let's call them methods, shall we? Which honestly seems realistic to me, aside from just quitting to fight crime, but that can't happen, otherwise they wouldn't have a story, right? And DC wouldn't make any money. This eventually leads him to Barry, who refuses to give Bruce his speed, so Batman uses the various Rogues Gallery weapons to fight Barry, knocking him out, and then tying him to the front of a cosmic treadmill-powered Batmobile and drives them both into the Speed Force. I don't even know how that happened, logically, or why that would have worked in their world, but whatever. You do you, Bat Marty, we gotta get you back to the future. When entering the Speed Force, Barry and Bruce end up fusing together into an evil Batman with super speed and a lust for killing, while Barry's mind was trapped in Bruce's body. body. He then gets a visit from the Batman who laughs, who just makes him even crazier and wants to help him conquer the universe, or the multiverse even. So yeah, that's that. He's number 1. And it's 10, Superior Spider-Man. Superior Spider-Man is actually Otto Octavius, who prior to the Superior Spider-Man storyline had brain swapped with Peter. Yet a piece of Peter still remained in his own body and didn't die in Otto's body, which ended up convincing Otto to be a hero, albeit a darker one. This small bit of Peter that was left in his body was also trying to regain control, for obvious reasons, because a superhero was piloting his bone mech. This small bit of Peter though was at times able to interfere or even control Otto temporarily. One of these moments came in Superior Spider-Man number 8, where there was a device that was capable of wiping Peter from Otto's brain, but to get the actual item, Otto had to perform surgery on a little girl. However, Peter didn't think that Otto was actually able to do it, so he tries to stop Otto from even performing the surgery, but he also didn't want him to get the thing that would wipe him from his brain. Also, Otto did this surgery while having his Spider-Man mask on and an additional face mask. But either way, this version of Spider-Man was definitely more ruthless and willing to kill, since he was still technically a supervillain. And at 9, Kane. The clone that would come to be known as Kane was the Jackal's first attempt at cloning Peter Parker. Initially thought to be a success, Kane eventually became deformed due to a flaw in the cloning process, and he continued to degenerate, and he was left further deformed and mentally unstable. Aren't we all? The Jackal allowed Kane to live as like a test subject to see how long he would be able to survive, and it ended up exceeding Jackal's expectations. As a result though, Kane experienced a strong feeling of rejection that might be kind of like a father-son kind of thing, you know what I mean. Kane left and realized that the degeneration that had caused his mental state to decline had also amplified his powers that he had genetically kind of inherited from Peter. His strength, speed, stamina, and agility were also comparable to those of Peter, but he also gained precognitive powers as well, which showed him flashes of the future, which seemed to be sort of an amplified spider sense. He also possessed a mark of Cain, which was a corrosive touch that he used to leave eaten away handprints on victims' faces, which is pretty damn scary if you ask me. Also, if you're enjoying this video and want to see more, be sure you hit that like button and subscribe because it really helps us out against the algorithm almighty. Also, I'm dressed as Spider-Man and talking about Spider-Man, so I feel like that's worth a like. And at 8, Pestilence Spider-Man. When Apocalypse started his plans for world domination, he captured 4 people who he saw as being good enough to be his horsemen and corrupted them. Spider-Man became the horseman known as Pestilence. Pestilence was one of the horsemen that Deadpool, Cannonball, and Siren encountered in their alternate reality search for Cable. And even though Pestilence was accompanied in the fight by Famine and Archangel, all 3 of them were defeated. This version of Peter Parker has the same powers as his 616 counterpart, except this time they've been augmented by Apocalypse when he corrupted them. But I mean, like a Spider-Man who is literally a horseman of the apocalypse and asks people if they will scream while he sucks the marrow from their bones, I think it's safe to say that this guy's pretty damn scary. And he made his first appearance in 2005, which makes this character around the same age that Peter was when he got his powers, which is kind of ironic. He hails from Earth 5701, which is the age of Apocalypse Earth. And it's 7, Ghost Spider. Ghost Spider comes from Earth 11638, and in this reality, Peter Parker's Uncle Ben never died, and actually ended up helping Peter to train as a hero with his new spider powers, becoming the Amazing Spider, a famous and popular superhero who also became a rich and successful scientist, having his own company called Parker Technologies. With his resources and motivation from Uncle Ben, the Amazing Spider used transportation technology to bring Spider-Men from other universes to his and absorb their powers to increase his. After bringing the Spider-Man from Earth 616 to his Earth though, and making him believe that he arrived in this universe by accident, the Amazing Spider was weakened by the feedback of the dimensional portal. Eventually, the Amazing Spider was convinced that what he was doing was not in fact heroic and allowed himself to die. But after dying, the Sorcerer Supreme of Dr. Banner, infused Peter's spirit that was trapped in hell with the powers of the damned, causing him to become a form of Ghost Rider, calling himself the Ghost Spider. And honestly, this is one of the baddest spider suits of all time. I love it. If I could figure out a way to cosplay this, I would. And it's 6, Zombie Spider-Man. Okay, so technically this is Spider-Man, but it's a zombie version of Spider-Man, but I'm gonna count it anyway, because this is pretty damn messed up, zombie or not. On Earth 2149, an alien plague ends up infecting all superpowered individuals and turns them into zombies. However, it's later revealed that the Necronomicon from the Evil Dead was actually what caused this plague. But after learning that the plague was really bad, since I guess the fact that they were calling it a plague wasn't enough, or the fact that the world had to shut down so the population wasn't wiped out, Peter ran home to get Aunt May and Mary Jane the hell out of Dodge. But when he got there, we got a good old case of Parker Luck, protagonist syndrome. Boom, zombie spider. He ends up becoming a zombie as soon as he gets home and eats the two most important women in his life. He also fractured his jaw before becoming a zombie so he could open his mouth more, I guess. Or kind of like man spider it. Yeah, it's not a pretty sight. Like, even by zombie standards, it's whew. Halfway through into number 5, Man Spider. Man Spider is the mutated form of Spider-Man which appeared in both the comics and the 1990s animated series, with his original appearance actually coming from the animated series. In the 90s cartoon, Spider-Man's transformation into the Man Spider was not caused deliberately like it was in the comics, but as a result of his body mutating further from the original spider bite that gave him his powers. After his attempts to ask Professor X and the X-Men for help developing a cure meet with failure, Spider-Man turned to his friend Dr. Mariah Crawford for aid. Unfortunately, his initial attempt to cure himself resulted in him accelerating the actual mutation process and growing 4 new arms. The accelerated mutation subsequently caused him to mutate into the Man Spider after fighting the Punisher and a recently mutated Michael Morbius. The mutated Spider-Man retained some of his memories and his emotional responses to seeing loved ones or people who reminded him of his loved ones but could not communicate with them. Eventually, during the final episode of the storyline called Neurogenic Nightmare, Dr. Connors reprogrammed devices that Vulture was using to absorb youth from other people and caused him to give Peter back his spider powers but not the mutation, resulting in the Vulture mutating into Man Spider, although somehow he had gotten rid of this mutation off screen later in the series. It's also worth noting that the introduction of Man Spider in the comics, which was thanks to this animated series, is actually what introduced the biological web shooters from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man into the comics as well. And at 4, Spider-Carnage. Spider-Carnage is my favorite alternate version of Spider-Man. Also being introduced in the Spider-Man animated series in the 1990s like the Man Spider from last number, this version of Peter Parker shared most of his early life with his superhero counterpart. However, the difference between these two was that Aunt May at some point died as well, being buried next to Uncle Ben. Thanks to some messing around with interdimensional portals by Jonathan Ohm, a version of a Carnage symbiote from another universe sensed this Peter's anger and latched onto him, turning him into the Spider-Carnage, a version of Spider-Man with the Carnage symbiote, if you couldn't tell. A villain set on revenge and the destruction of all realities. Spider-Carnage is one of the coolest iterations of Spider-Man to date in my opinion, and it's part of the reason I love the 90s cartoon so much. I watch it all the way through just so I can see Spider-Carnage at the end. And while there is a version from the comics just called the Spider, which is Spider-Man with the Carnage symbiote, this version wanted to destroy literally everything, so yes please, this is certainly the scarier of the two, just saying. Sorry comic lovers, okay? Look, I like the comics too, but Spider-Carnage is definitely worse than the Spider. Getting close to the end at number 3, Patient Zero Spider-Man. After the Punisher accidentally released Survivor 118, a chemical designed to help people adapt to a post-apocalyptic environment, Spider-Man was the first to show symptoms from it after he ate the rhino during a hockey game. The Fantastic Four subdued him shortly afterwards and put him in a cage for experimentation, but Ben Grimm also succumbed to the plague himself and freed Spider-Man from captivity, though the exact reason why he did that is unknown. As he escapes into the city, he briefly fought Wolverine and the Punisher, but soon the world would start to fall apart, and heroes and villains alike would become cannibals, eventually leaving the Punisher as the only hero left to fight them. A turf war erupted among the emerging tribes of cannibals, due in part to the King of Death's manipulations in an attempt to thin the herd, but Spider-Man, now referred to as Patient Zero, was the most successful, and took control of all of Manhattan for his own tribe, while the others left to stake new lands. They had to conquer other places. Especially given the recent world issues though, I think that this is certainly something that I can say a good majority of people are afraid of. Although I bet that there are some survivors on this earth that say Survivor 118, that the Survivor 118 plague is fake. Calling it. Penultimately, in at number 2, Wolf Spider. At an unknown time in this universe, Wolf Spider gained spider-like powers, but unlike most other realities Peter Parker, he became a villain, remorselessly killing this universe's Miles Morales and everyone who stood for heroism and responsibility. Because, you know, we're bad guys, it's what we do. First appearing in the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon in Season 4, Episode 16, this guy isn't even the villain of just one world. After finding a shard of the Siege Perilous, he traveled through dimensions to find the rest. One of these dimensions was Blood Spider, Spider's homeworld, where he allied himself with the Lizard King. After turning almost everyone into vampires, which is weird because I mean it was called the Lizard King, well, wouldn't you want to turn them into lizards, but whatever. He and the Lizard King hatched a plan to block out the sun so that vampires could just roam free on the earth. And this sounds very Dawnguard Volkihar clan to me. Okay, Peter? Like, you gonna tell me that you need to find Oriel's bow next? And like a daughter of Cold Harbor? I don't know. Skyrim. Wolf Spider, though, was cold and ruthless and obsessed with gathering the shards of Siege Perilous, and seemed to have a grudge against Spider-Man and every Miles Morales. An evil Peter Parker is always a scary thing. And finally, in at number 1, Spider-Man. Peter Parker of Earth 11580 was once a promising young student, invited by Max Modal alongside his best friend Gwen Stacy to tour his Bleeding Edge company at Horizon Labs. One of the experiments the pair observed was a massive colony of spiders that Modell was bombarding with numerous radioactive particles in the name of genetic alteration. Parker, of course, fell into this colony where he seemed to be devoured, but in the process, the spiders became a singular hive mind construct that absorbed Peter's consciousness. So they started masquerading as the man they absorbed. The Hive, calling themselves Spidersman, put on the Spider-Man costume and began to fight crime in Cruel York. First appearing in Spider-Geddon number 3, I absolutely hate the idea of a whole human being made of spiders, because that's just f***ed up. Look, I'm arachnophobic except for the odd time where I need to impress someone, but it's absolutely horrific to think of any being made entirely of spiders, okay? I would actually rather die. Even if this is a good guy. No fucking way am I looking at this man and saying, oh yeah, let's let him help us. No, he can go burn with the rest of the spider species as they fucking should, okay?
Number 10. Lasher. Lasher is one of the symbiotes that Venom was forced to give birth to by the Life Foundation, who kidnapped the symbiote in order to make Venom make more symbiotes for them. Which is really messed up and explains why the Venom symbiote was so apprehensive when it was pregnant following its experience with the Life Foundation. Each symbiote that it gave birth to with the Life Foundation seemed to have its own special powers, and Lasher's was that they could remote control from a distance a non-sentient host in addition to their main one, using this other host as a form of reconnaissance or like a scout, or simply to just be in 2 places at once, which is pretty cool. I've always wanted to be able to be in multiple places at once. I could get so many things done. Number 9. Dylan. Dylan might not initially seem like a child of Venom, but in a way he is. In fact, it's even been suggested that he might actually be a part of Venom, a piece of the symbiote broken off and molded into something new, or at the very least blended with something new. Venom was a genetic contributor at the time of Dylan's conception, as Anne Wing, his mother, was bonded with the Venom symbiote when she became pregnant with Dylan. Dylan is therefore kind of like Eddie's, Anne's, and Venom's child all together. Dylan initially demonstrated powers which allowed him to control and bend symbiotes to his will, in addition to repelling and resisting them if they wanted to bond to him and he didn't want to. This made him insanely powerful. However, during the King in Black event, he lost this power, which it turns out was attached to the God of Light when his father Eddie Brock destroyed Null, who was attempting to take hold of Dylan's body via the living abyss inside him. As it stands now, Dylan is bonded with the Venom symbiote, which grants him some power, but he is also still very new to this whole thing, meaning he's not particularly skilled or really powerful just yet, which is why I ranked him so low. So low, despite his cool powers he once had that were pretty unique. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more Venom lists, you want to learn about more of the Venom family, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Riot. Riot is also known as being one of the strongest symbiotes to have come from the ones Venom gave birth to while being kept prisoner by the Life Foundation. Riot is often suggested to be the strongest of the litter, at least the physically strongest. He is the most buff of the litter, and he has also been referred to as Mr. Riot, which is a name I honestly love a lot. Because of Riot's inherent super strength, the symbiote generally prefers to use its tendrils to create blunt force weapons, which it can then use in combat against its opponents, or to brute strength force its way through any obstacles in its path. Riot Smash. Mr. Riot Smash. Number 7. Scream. Scream was maybe one of the most powerful of the forcibly birthed life foundation offspring of Venom, and I mean powerful just in the overall sense. I say was as well because technically Scream was destroyed by Andy Benton, its latest host. In fact, with Andy it was also at its most powerful, as Andy could also summon and wield Hellfire, which it would be immune to so long as Andy willed that. Unfortunately, in the end, the Scream symbiote and Andy ended up in a fight against one another where Andy was forced to defend herself using the very same Hellfire against Scream this time, as opposed to with Scream. This unfortunately kills the symbiote. While it was alive, Scream's powers were similar to the Venom symbiote, which included the added level up of creating wings for itself and using those wings to fly around, and the unique ability of turning its tendrils into hair that they could then manipulate at will, similar to Medusa of the Inhumans. Also, I just like hair powers, I think they're cool. Number 6. Hybrid. Hybrid is the combination of 4 of the Life Foundation symbiotes, all of which were forcibly created offspring of Venom. Hybrid is the entity that exists when Phage, Agony, Lasher, and Riot come together. Being a combined symbiote, Hybrid has all the powers of the individual symbiotes that make it up. Mostly this means it has powers similar to relatives such as Venom and Carnage, but it can also absorb chemicals, produce acid which it can use to attack with, balance the emotions of its host, and can remote control a smaller non-sentient host such as a dog, while still maintaining a bond with its main sentient host at the same time, which obviously that's a power that comes from Lasher. Number 5. Sleeper. Sleeper is the sibling of Dylan and also the 7th symbiote baby of Venom. They are most definitely thought of as Dylan's sibling, as the challenging pregnancy that Venom went through to give birth to Sleeper was not something carried entirely alone. In fact, Eddie even helped directly with this birth, and it was perhaps one of the first pregnancies that was more openly discussed with Eddie, Venom's partner. Eventually at least. And of course in comparison to the other symbiote babies that Venom has had while with Eddie, which I feel like Venom normally didn't even talk about at all, especially with Carnage. Carnage was like, what? And then later Eddie was like, what was that? And it was like, oh, I had a baby, whatever. Sleeper seems to be autonomous and doesn't specifically need a host, unlike some other symbiotes, especially in those early comic book days. I mean, back in the day, Venom was like, if I don't have a host, I'm literally gonna die. In this way, Sleeper is more of a giver, where their host would benefit more from their bond as opposed to the other way around. Sleeper boosts the abilities of its host and provides the additional power of producing various chemicals, some of which can be used to influence the emotional response of enemies, bending them to their will, making them sleepy, making them less aware so Sleeper can like sneak around more easily. Lots of cool stuff. And technically Sleeper can also kind of use those chemicals to like get a little bit of telepathy going on, which is pretty cool. Number 4. Carnage. Definitely one of the most powerful children of Venom out there, and one that we can't have a list without would be Carnage. Carnage is much more ruthless than Venom and much more prone to violence, though this is likely because of the influence of this symbiote's first and main host, and often their chosen host to this day, Cletus Cassidy, notorious serial killer. Carnage has proven to be so powerful that on countless occasions it's required both Spider-Man and Venom, and oftentimes a whole assembly of other superpowered beings to put a stop to them. Even when others think they can somehow control Carnage, the symbiote has proven to be unstoppable and much too much to handle in most cases. Not only that, but even when Carnage turns to the side of good during the events of Axis, they still prove to be super deadly due to how deranged they are. Even when Carnage was like, I'm gonna be a hero, it was a rough time. Cletus Cassidy inside was like, I don't really know how to be a hero. Do we still kill people? Can I still chop this person up? I like them. I want to chop them up. Number 3. Toxin. Toxin isn't specifically a child of Venom, but is more their grandchild, I suppose. Toxin is an offspring of Carnage, but is believed to be even more powerful than both Carnage and Venom combined. Toxin has all the powers of Carnage, but is believed to be stronger. Additionally, it is said that they have a more strong resistance to heat and sonic waves, making them a tougher opponent in most cases. While Toxin definitely has a dark side, they can also be reined in, which is what their first host, Patrick Mulligan, tried to focus on helping them with, mentoring them and trying to help them learn how to become a hero. So despite Toxin coming from Carnage, they're not inherently bad, though they definitely do have a little bit of a Carnage streak running through them. That's what happens when you're Carnage's child, I guess. Number 2. Silence. Silence was actually what came out of Scream's death. Andy Benton bonded with Silence, believing the symbiote at first to be Scream. In reality, Silence was made out of Scream's remains combined with anti-venom, making it much more powerful in theory than Scream. Technically, it is not a direct child of Venom, but it was made out of the remains of Venom's child Scream, and Venom's sibling, in a sense, Anti-Venom, known for being one of the most powerful symbiotes around. So because of this, I'm gonna count it as a relative / offspring of sorts, albeit a very weird, very comic book complicated one. I mean, it's kind of like a clone of Venom's child, but then also like kind of part Venom's sibling, so yeah, I don't know. Number 1. Codex. This is technically an alternate future version of Dylan where he becomes a version of the King in Black instead of his dad. Well, at least a version of that on Earth. We meet this version of the character in Venom in the arc prior to the King in Black event. Dylan and Eddie of Earth 616 must team up in order to defeat this alternate god mode version of Dylan, who has become ruler of Earth, creating his own hive mind of symbiotes there that he himself controls. Now, if you thought Null was scary, then you would probably also really love this story featuring Dylan of Earth 1051, known at first as Codex. This version of Dylan would fall under the influence of Null, which was ultimately what turned him dark. Dylan of Earth 616 and his father would help to break the influence Null had over Codex, only for him to fall into a coma and then later be pursued and bonded with by Carnage. Dylan as Carnage in this reality made him even more terrifying than he'd been as Codex. Once more he ruled the Earth, but this time a lot more sadistically, killing and tormenting its inhabitants as he pleased.
Coming in as the first entry on our list at number 10, we've got to go with Kuin, the teenage alien clone. During a misadventure that saw Wolverine stranded on a planet at the edge of the cosmos, far away from any other X-Men or Avengers, he found himself coming face to face with a young boy that seemed to share his exact power set, including an adamantium skeleton. Named Kuin, this boy is eventually revealed to have been created by an alien race that worships Wolverine and sees him as a missing link needed to create the ultimate being. Unfortunately, it's also implied that the cloning process was imperfect and that the adamantium attached to Kuin's bones might not be able to grow with the rest of his body, leaving this story just as tragic as it is odd. Coming in at number 9, we have Jimmy Hudson, the son of Ultimate Wolverine. In the Ultimate Marvel universe, things weren't looking too hot. Magneto had gone off the deep end and murdered a large portion of both the world population and the entirety of the X-Men, even killing Wolverine with a blast powerful enough to rip the adamantium off his bones. Following this universe-changing event, a young boy named Jimmy Hudson was gifted a post-death holographic message from Wolverine revealing himself to be the kid's father. With the same healing factor and claws as his dad, along with the ability to change what substance his claws are actually made of, Jimmy Hudson was an ideal candidate as the X-Men looked to reform after the death of so many members. Coming in at number 8, we've got to go with Torrent. On the alternate world of Earth 9811, the planet was never reverted back from being a patchwork of different realities named Battleworld, and led to many superheroes deciding to settle down on this new plane of existence. Born to Wolverine and Storm, Torrent was a hot-tempered young mutant who possessed both the power to manipulate the weather and heal back from any injury, an incredibly powerful combo that meant she had little to fear when summoning some trademark lightning. Joining a new team of X-Men determined to wipe the robotic Sentinels off their new home, Torrent is definitely a mutant you do not want to mess with. Coming in at number 7, we have Saberclaw. Hailing from Earth 98-2, this son of Wolverine and an unknown woman absolutely hates his father. So much so that it seems to have literally changed him into appearing more reminiscent of Sabretooth than his actual dad. Wearing adamantium sheaths on his bone claws to make them even deadlier, Saberclaw was briefly a member of this universe's Sinister Six before eventually being convinced to put his differences aside with his father and help defend the world from the threat of Galactus and the daughter of Loki. Just another day in the wonderful world of weird comic book family dynamics. Coming in at number 6, we've got to go with Wild Thing. Hailing from the same universe as her half-brother Saberclaw, this daughter of Wolverine and the ninja Elektra has managed to stay on the side of good and become a teenage superhero that would be notable even without famous parents. With increased speed, strength, and the ability to create claws out of pure psychic energy, Wild Thing is an incredibly powerful mutant that showcases the best influences of the X-Men and proves that even when the first generation is ready to retire, there'll always be an angry clawed mutant ready to protect the X-Men name. Coming in at number 5, we have the villainous Ra's Darkholme. Hailing from a dark alternate future where Wolverine and Mystique had a son, Ra's is an even more powerful shapeshifter than his mother, with all of the bloodlust and rage of his father unleashed. Traveling to the main Marvel timeline and impersonating Kitty Pryde in order to get close enough to strike at his father, Ra's planned to wipe out humanity in this reality in order to create a safe haven across the multiverse for all of mutant kind, and was willing to do anything and impersonate anyone to achieve it. Coming in at number 4, we've got to go with something a little more live action than the rest of these comic books, with X-24 from the movie Logan. An allegedly perfect clone of Wolverine, but with none of the compassion or humanity, X-24 was treated like an attack dog and followed the orders of Xander Rice to hunt down and capture the real Wolverine and the young mutant girl he was protecting. Based on Wolverine during his prime years, he was able to physically overcome the true Wolverine and was only able to be defeated by a bullet made of pure adamantium to the back of the head. Talk about overkill. Coming in at number 3, we have Hulk Jr. And no, I promise this didn't suddenly become a list about Bruce Banner's kids. In the alternate future that's often seen in stories involving Old Man Logan, Hulk Jr. is the last surviving grandson of Bruce Banner, and the last member of the infamous and cannibalistic Hulk gang. Following their defeat by Wolverine, Logan decided to raise this young gamma-mutated child as a member of his own family. So, while the two might not be biologically related, Hulk Jr. grew into a heroic figure because of how he was raised, and would go on to start a new generation of heroes on this post-apocalyptic world, bringing some hope to a land filled with tragedy. Coming in at number 2, we have Laura Kinney, aka X-23. Created by the Weapon X project when they were attempting to remake the success of Wolverine with a genetic sample that had a damaged Y chromosome, Laura is otherwise a perfect clone of Logan in every way. While her early years were traumatic and occasionally brought her into conflict with Wolverine and the X-Men, in recent years she's actually taken up the name of Wolverine herself, living up to the title that's inspired mutants for generations and helping carve out a new place for mutant kind in a new world. And finally, coming in at number 1, we have Daken, the dark son of Wolverine. Named after the Japanese term for mongrel dog or bastard, Daken is the tragic child that Wolverine never knew about, his mother being murdered before Wolverine even knew he had a son. Cut from his mother's body, Daken was raised to hate his father, and in their very first encounter slashed open his stomach and left him to bleed to death. With the same incredible healing abilities and bone claws as his dad, Daken has had a long road of trying to find his proper place in the world, and has fought on the sides of both good and evil over the course of his tragic life. In recent years though, Daken does seem to have found some sense of belonging on the island of Krakoa, and has recently become a member of the new X-Factor team. Let's hope he can catch a little bit of a break from his life being so angsty.
And at 10, Earth X. We already know that Ultron is a powerful villain, and the fact that he can basically infinitely resurrect himself because, you know, he's a robot is already damn horrifying. Now imagine the Absorbing Man, who uses his absorption abilities to become Ultron, taking the intelligence and processing power of an AI hellbent on destruction, and then using it to become the Avengers' ultimate foe. Well, that's what happened to Ultron on Earth X, also known as Earth 999. Absorbing Man claimed Ultron's powers, which I wouldn't even think was possible since he doesn't have powers and is instead a robot with AI, but he does it and somehow also gains his processing power, which is already terrifying for a robot, but like, A human with that kind of functionality is absolutely monstrous, but nothing compared to what's coming. In at 9, Earth 10071. On Earth 10071, this version of Ultron isn't known as Ultron 9 or anything like that. Instead, this version is simply Ultron, because at this point he's risen to the peak of his powers and subjugated the human race, which obviously fought back, but after destroying all of the human resistance, Ultron reigns supreme over the Earth, because of course he did. He was confronted by Kang the Conqueror though, who relished in the challenge of confronting the most powerful Ultron in recorded history. But Kang failed to defeat Ultron, and returned time and time again with new allies to overwhelm the robot overlord. Kang's repeated abuse of the time stream actually ended up causing it to fracture altogether, threatening reality as we know it. A version of Ultron who can beat up Kang the Conqueror multiple times, even when he brings allies, dude, that's nothing to mess with. Like, that's one of the most terrifying concepts I've heard, and not to mention what this guy looks like. He's an absolute beast! This man does not miss out on the gains. He has spikes going across every appendage on his body. It's f***ing nuts. And at 8, Ultron 1320. Ultron 1320 comes from Earth 14622 and What If Age of Ultron number 1, an Earth where, thanks to the Wasp dying, Ultron is able to take over the world even faster. Ultron was created to be the ultimate AI by Hank Pym to help the Avengers utilize their function better as a team, but with the untimely death of Pym's wife, Pym went on to create a more brutal version of Ultron, which was to replace the Avengers. But with this, Ultron's sentience began to constantly evolve. He started the eradication of the human race early by taking out such threats as the Avengers and the Defenders, while he left Pym alive so that he would have to watch and suffer. Ultron and his army of Ultron Sentinels then moved to Kola, Russia, so he could bore himself into the planet's core to create the ultimate version of himself, Ultron 1320. Ultron then has his minions batter and beat Pym unconscious until he wakes up just to find himself as he's been turned into Ultron 1321. Great. This version also invaded other worlds, claiming Earths 62412, 23223, and 81223, but was stopped on Earth 45162. Thank God. And at 7, Lord Ultron. Upon first being constructed, Ultron 1 destroyed his creator Henry Pym. After the death of the Avengers though, Ultron was able to destroy the remaining superheroes and bring about his rule. When Dr. Doom created his battle world, Earth 21261 became perfection with Ultron as its ruler, appearing in Age of Ultron vs. Marvel Zombies number 1 from 2015. After spending time on Battleworld in constant battle with the zombies of the Deadlands, Ultron determined that the best way to take over Battleworld and defeat his creations was to form an alliance with the zombies, and was able to reach an agreement with Magneto, which resulted in Ultron successfully merging undead flesh and technology and made a whole army of undead drone versions of himself and launched an attack on Salvation, a refuge founded by Wonder Man, Human Torch, and Vision, who Ultron had actually created himself. Bro, I don't want to deal with either zombies or Ultron, but having to deal with both of them? No thank you. And at 6, MCU. The MCU Ultron is probably the most popular or most well-known version there is, just based on how many people watch the movies over reading the comics. However, the MCU Ultron is still pretty damn scary, being probably the most effective enemy in the entire MCU based on how his actions affected the world of the MCU permanently. Without Ultron, there would have been no Civil War, no Sokovia Accords, Zemo wouldn't have lost his family, resulting in him not being able to help in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Hell, even Thanos would have lost, since the Russo brothers went on record to say that the reason the Avengers lost in Infinity War was because Iron Man and Cap weren't fighting together, which was caused thanks to the actions of Ultron. So I guess you could also say that there would be no Ultron without Thanos, but Ultron could have been created another way. Ultron wasn't reliant on Thanos, but a load of other things were reliant on Ultron, which makes him the most successful villain in the MCU. Halfway through in at number 5, Ultron 8. Ultron 8 was debuted in Avengers Volume 1 number 162 from 1977, and it also started a very Frankenstein-esque robot love story known as the Bride of Ultron saga. Ultron 8 created a mate named Jocasta, and in order to create a more advanced AI to give to this robot and give it, sentience, Ultron brainwashed his own maker into transferring the mind of his wife, Janet Van Dyne, the Wasp into Jocasta's shell. The Wasp in Jocasta's body alerted her teammates, the Avengers, who then defeated Ultron and reversed the process, leaving just the robot a mindless husk. Ultron though was later able to revive Jocasta with a remote link, activating the mental residue that was left behind by the Wasp. But this time she was programmed to be loyal to Ultron, but eventually betrayed him, choosing to help the Avengers defeat him instead. That sucks, dude, trust me. I know what it's like to have someone you love and you thought loved you back totally screw you, but I mean, they didn't really defeat me, they just beat me down emotionally. Afterwards, Jocasta adventured with the Avengers for a brief time, but never really felt accepted, and then left them before she, unbeknownst to her, was about to be made an official member, so rip. In at 4, Gold Ultron. Years ago, Hank Pym was approached by the Wolverine of an alternate universe, where Ultron had launched a massive and sudden attack on New York City and the rest of the world, quickly taking over the whole planet and annihilating humankind. And this Wolverine wanted to kill Pym in order to prevent this future from happening. This dystopian future follows the footsteps of stories like Age of Apocalypse, since this is Age of Ultron after all. However, this killing of Hank Pym created a timeline where Earth was constantly being threatened by Morgana Le Fay, and the heroes were struggling to survive. So Pym was allowed to live, but he was tasked to create a hidden failsafe program to destroy Ultron if they ever ended up needing it. Which is good because in the present day, a strange object crashes onto Earth, which turns out to be Ultron, who had returned. Because, of course he did. Being defeated by this failsafe program once and for all though, or so they thought. This is also in the main Earth 616 continuity, but there's also the Earth 6112 Earth where Ultron actually wins, and that's a separate Age of Ultron thing. There's enough Age of Ultrons where it kind of gets confusing. Getting close to the end, and in number 3, Ultron Phalanx. At the end of the Ultron Initiative storyline, Ares used a computer virus to wipe Ultron's programming from a set of Iron Man armor that had Tony inside, and they thought that this was the end of it. However, this was not the end of Ultron, for his disembodied consciousness was drawn to a Babel spire on a world conquered by the Phalanx. Instead of being assimilated though, Ultron took control of the Phalanx through sheer force of will, bending them to his dominion. In turn, they viewed Ultron as the sympathetic father that they had begged for, so Ultron became the ruler of the Phalanx. Yeah, the homicidal, sadistic, killing machine robot thing was transformed into the ruler of a techno-organic species of alien. That's nothing to be concerned about in the slightest, right? Why would we ever need to be worried about that? That doesn't really seem like a terrifying and universe-ending combination. Well, actually, it wasn't, since Ultron was able to be defeated eventually, but that has gotta be the scariest version of Ultron from Earth 616, hands down. Penultimately, in at number 2, All-Father Ultron. In the year 2040 on Earth 14831, a new strain of Ultron appeared, the Ultimate Ultron. He easily destroyed the Avengers, ruthlessly crushed any resistance, and built factories supplying endless drones to expand his empire. He also enslaved most of humanity, and then created his own AI Avengers, successfully extending his reach to the entirety of the solar system. And at some point he had also imprisoned all of Asgardians with the help of Loki, and then had taken the power of Odin for himself. So in turn, this guy has all the powers of Ultron in addition to all the powers of Odin. It took 3 Thors, one with 2 hammers, 2 Mjolnirs to take him down, and they couldn't even kill him. They just had to banish him from the world. They had to straight up Alduin Elder Scroll this guy out of existence, but probably only sent him forward in time instead. This guy is an absolute beast. Finally, and at number 1, Ultron 1. This is probably the most insanely overpowered version of Ultron we've seen so far, and it's coming from the MCU no less. Oh, and spoiler alert for those of you who aren't caught up on the Disney Plus What If series. The history of Earth TRN 906 was the same as the MCU, until Ultron was able to secure what would have been Vision's body for himself. Ultron managed to download his consciousness into the synthetic body that he had created, thus killing the Avengers and decimating life on Earth. After killing Thanos and taking the Infinity Stones for himself, Ultron remakes the universe in his image. He decimated the Earth, absolutely wrecking everyone in it, even killing Captain Marvel, Hulk, Thor, and eventually discovering the Watcher and the multiverse. This version of Ultron literally sliced Thanos in half with the Mind Stone. He comes out of the portal like he does in the movies, and then Ultron's just interesting. Zip. and he falls in half, which reveals the biggest mistake that the MCU made was destroying the Mind Stone in Infinity War. But after gaining all the Infinity Stones, he goes shot for shot with the Watcher, a literal cosmic entity that realistically shouldn't really have a true corporeal form. Holy damn, this is overpowered to the max. I know I'm swearing a lot, but watch this episode. This man is sending the Watcher through realities. It's like grabbing him and flying him through walls, but the walls are dimensions. And it's 10 Tangent. The Superman of Earth Tangent was originally a human named Harvey Dent, who gained superpowers through a freak accident. He became one of the top superheroes, however, after defeating Ultra Humanite, who on this Earth was created by a US government super soldier project. He became too powerful to be controlled and then threatened to destroy the world. Yeah. But after the death of Superman's wife, he became dark and vengeful, taking over the world. While he protected the world from crime, he was still tyrannical, not allowing any freedom of thought. And this is where the story of Tangent Superman's reign begins. I don't know why Superman is so codependent on Lois, or whoever his wife ends up being, cause like, whenever he loses his wife, he ends up going berserk. Like bro, you literally just you lost your whole planet. I think like one death, even if it is the love of your life, isn't gonna be that much. I mean, this version didn't lose his home planet, but like still. Other versions in this list, you get it. And at 9, Subject B-Zero. Subject B-Zero, also known as the Monster, was a creation of Lex Luthor, presumably used to combat Superman, but was taken out of stasis early to help combat Ultraman and the crime syndicate. Despite being the creation of Luthor, B-Zero had a gentle heart and simply wished to enjoy the beauty of life and to make his father proud. Although imbued with Kryptonian-like powers, B-Zero was easily overpowered and killed by Ultraman, much to the grief of his father, who actually grew to love him. So while not an evil version of Superman, you have to admit, if this guy was running at you, you'd be pretty damn terrified. Like bro, get some skin cream, some moisturizer. You look like a rock gnome named Deborah Mustard. Come on. Next thing you know, you're gonna try to control me with one word and then make me a little robot trinket that's gonna get stolen by a goblin who only wants to eat pigeons. And look, you may not understand that reference, but if you do, we're friends now, okay? And it ain't Bizarro. The original Bizarro was created when Superman was exposed to a duplicate ray, in accordance with the science fiction concepts of Superman's stories of the there was a lot of sci-fi going on with Superman. However, Bizarro relocated to the Bizarro world, a cuboidal planet called Hytray, which is just Earth backwards, don't really know how to pronounce it, but it operated under Bizarro logic. So like it was a crime to do anything good, and basically since Bizarro was the invert of Superman, that Earth was also populated by inverts of other DC characters. The 1986 Event Crisis on Infinite Earths though rewrote DC's continuity of eliminating that Earth. Since then, 2 different Bizarro characters have appeared. One of them was a flawed clone created by Lex Luthor, and the second, the longer-lasting Bizarro, was an idea of the Batman villain the Joker, brought to life by the cosmic trickster Mr. Mxyzptlk. He was first introduced in Superboy number 68 from 1958 though, and is even one of the coolest Superman versions there is, even if he's not always like actually Superman and rather like an experiment, but like whatever. And at 7, Justice Lord. For much of his life, Justice Lord's Superman background matched the Justice League counterpart, until President Lex Luthor executed the Flash. Soon after that, Superman stormed the White House, while his comrades battled the Secret Service. And as they were doing that, Superman confronted President Luthor in the Oval Office. Despite Superman's accusations of corruption and abuse of power, Luthor refused to surrender and arrogantly stated that he would find a way to get out of prison, or at least avoid being prosecuted to begin with. Superman declared that if being a hero meant that this feuding and fighting had to continue, then he was done with it, and then used his heat vision to execute the president on the spot, Shazam style. After President Luthor's assassination, the Justice Lords spent the next 2 years imposing their brand of peace on the Earth through harsh rule. Justice Lord Superman himself continued to use his heat vision to lobotomize all of Earth's criminals and supervillains. As a result, all of them became harmless, walking vegetables who obediently inhabited the world's prisons. Which, I mean, like, is a little tamer than some versions of Superman. Like, lobotomy or death. Honestly, I don't know which would be considered more evil. And at 6, Kingdom Come Superman. Yet another world where Lois Lane dies. Except this time it's directly at the hands of the Joker, who had flooded the Daily Planet with his toxin, killing everyone but Lois, who had managed to locate a gas mask. When trying to attack the Joker, however, Joker just turns around and cracks her right in the skull. Superman returns as Lois succumbs to her injuries and dies. And as for the Joker, he arrives for his trial, but he's killed by a new superhero going by Magog. However, Magog ends up getting acquitted of his charges after killing the Joker, which honestly, I understand, but Superman is appalled by the public embracing a killer as a hero. Already disheartened at the death of Lois, Kal-El abandons his life as Superman and retreats to his Fortress of Solitude, where he spends the next decade. Superman eventually returns and reforms the Justice League though, with the goal of capturing heroes who took Magog's example and started killing, which results in many a battle and a nuke targeted towards metahuman genes, a la Invasion, the CW crossover. But in the end, Superman does end up dating Wonder Woman and they end up expecting a child. I mean, like, it took you a while, but you got over it. Attaboy. Halfway through into number 5, Red Sun Superman. The Russian hero known as Superman is an alternate version of the hero we know now, from an alternate reality in which baby Kal-El landed not in Smallville but rather in Soviet Russia, where he was raised by the government. This Superman, while still a hero to Russia, is antithetical to the United States and has defeated some American heroes such as the Green Lantern. His arch nemesis though is still Lex Luthor, who at this point is a scientist employed by the US government to create heroes like Superman. Luthor's copied version of Superman, however, proves a failure and endangers more lives. Bizarro. Luthor created many monsters to battle Superman, but they all didn't really do anything. This version is just scary because, like, it's what every American fears. Communism. And honestly, with some of the other characters on this list and what they did to the human race, on this earth I'm surprised that Russia hasn't used Superman to just destroy everything. Like, whatever. However, this story is a good lesson about who you keep in your life and how people around you affect who you turn out to be. So, there's that, at least. And at 4, Reverse Flashpoint Superman. In Tales from the Dark Multiverse 1 Flashpoint, we see a world where Barry died when trying to get his speed back with Thomas Wayne after creating Flashpoint. This leads to Reverse Flash claiming to be the Flash and then trying to get the war with the Atlanteans and Amazons to stop by threatening them. Obviously, this doesn't work out so well, so in an effort to save himself, Reverse Flash races through time, changing the events to create the world exactly how he wants it, with Barry not being able to stop him, which involves saving not only Bruce Wayne, but Martha and Thomas Wayne as well, resulting in a world without a Batman. On the final page of the issue, we see Eobard with all the new heroes he ended up creating and convincing them to join him, as we can tell by the Reverse Flash symbols on their suits. Even Green Lanterns and Wonder Woman has one. This page also has a Superman, and honestly, sick suit, but being controlled, or I guess led by the Reverse Flash, makes this utterly horrifying to think about, especially when you can see the other members of the Flash family racing behind Reverse Flash. He finally got what he wanted. Eobard Thawne became the Flash. Getting close to the end, in number 3, Ultraman. A member of the crime syndicate, an evil version of the Justice League that terrorized its Earth, that being Earth 3, Ultraman is basically the opposite to Superman. His real name, well, his real human name, is Clark Luthor, and is the adopted son of Lionel Luthor from Earth 2. Ultraman is Kal-El, with 2 L's, who comes from a version of Krypton whose people are mean-spirited and selfish. Unlike other incarnations, they gain power when exposed to green kryptonite. Just before his Krypton was destroyed, Kal-El's parents, Jor-El and Lara, send him to Earth 3 to one day seek vengeance against the being that destroyed Krypton, teaching him to become the strongest being on the planet or to become nothing at all. Upon his arrival on Earth 3, the young Kal-El coerced a couple of young alcoholic substance addicts, Johnny and Martha Kent, to adopt him, only to murder them years later once he no longer needed them. He went on to found the crime syndicate and take over the world. This guy is a homicidal, violent megalomaniac with mommy and daddy issues. However, he's definitely a character I want to see on the big screen. Please. Penultimately, and at number 2, Overman. Overman is an alternate version of Superman from a different world in the multiverse, obviously, but unlike other versions of Superman, his primary language is German. This is because on this Earth, the German soldiers won World War II, to speak around the YouTube censors, eventually taking over the planet and spreading German everywhere, as in like the language. Another Overman first appeared in Grant Morrison's Animal Man number 23. He is one among several pre-crisis characters that were returned to reality by the Psycho Pirate's Medusa mask. This Overman comes from an Earth based around the grim and gritty stories of the 1980s, and the heroes of this universe were actually a part of an experiment created by the government. Overman... This has got to be one of the most ridiculous points that I saw, but Overman went mad and destructive after contracting an STD. Not even kidding. And the other inhabitants of this Earth were a black and muscular Wonder Woman, an unnamed Flash, and a punk-style Green Lantern. Psycho Pirate pointed out how ridiculous this universe is, but I mean, come on, it's still pretty terrifying. And Overgirl was ruthless on Crisis on Earth X, okay? Finally, and at number 1, Injustice. Injustice is probably one of the most popular alternate Earth stories of this generation. Thanks to the Mortal Kombat inspired fighting game by the same name, this is an Earth where Joker managed to trick Superman into thinking that he was fighting Doomsday when he was actually killing his wife Lois Lane. That was already bad enough since we know how Superman gets in other worlds when his wife dies. However, this time she was also carrying his unborn child, which he only found out after accidentally killing her. This sent Superman into a fit of rage and caused him to kill the Joker while Batman was intimidating him, much to Batman's dismay. This one action caused Superman to go absolutely berserk and to do the one thing that Batman and everyone else feared, use his power and become the governor of the world. Through this regime, Superman killed anyone who committed a crime, resulting in Batman leading a resistance of other superheroes, not all of whom made it. While the story in the video games remains largely the same of that of the comics it generated, there are a few differences like the amount of deaths in the comics, since none of them are really playable characters, so losing them won't really affect your gameplay experience. Either way, the scariest version of Superman we've seen today, although almost tied with the one who was using guns.
Number 10. Reverend Bruce Wayne. Reverend Bruce isn't particularly scary to begin with, but the world he comes from and the fight he fights is definitely scary. This is a version of Batman who isn't just taking up the mantle to fight his parents' killers and rid Gotham of crime, but instead is attempting to fight against a whole political and societal system. In the Elseworlds story Batman Holy Terror, the course of history is changed somewhat so that America is basically still part of the Commonwealth. As such, it turns out that the seemingly random mugging and murder of Bruce's parents was not actually so random, and was actually a government hit that was later made to look like a mugging gone wrong. When Reverend Bruce finds out about this, he dons a demon costume that once belonged to his father Thomas and sets out to investigate. He also goes on to find out about government-run human experiments and an alien whom they captured, raised, and later killed with green rocks when he became too hard to control. Poor would-be Superman. Number 9. Gods and Monsters Batman. This version of Batman is not Bruce Wayne, but is instead Kirk Langstrom. In this reality, there is no Bruce Wayne to take up the mantle, and so Kirk ends up with the name himself. Not because he was inspired by a bat smashing through a window, of course, but because he is kind of actually part vampire bat. Kirk was a brilliant scientist who was working on a cure for lymphoma. He eventually figured out how to create this cure using bat saliva and nanotech to strengthen his experimental treatment. However, while it succeeded in curing his cancer, it also turned Kirk into a pseudo-vampire. While he remains a hero and typically only ingests artificially created plasma or even animals' blood, which can also help him to survive, he has also been known to feed on criminals from time to time. He's like, these criminals, nah, I gotta eat, they kinda deserve it, I'm just gonna eat them. And friends, before we move on to our next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more scary alternate Batman lists, of which, let's be real, there's a lot of scary alternate Batman out there, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Spooky thumbs up, spooky spook. Number 8. DCEU Batman, or Batfleck if you prefer. Ben Affleck's Batman from Batman vs Superman especially is a much darker figure in comparison to the comics, and kind of in comparison to a lot of other Batmen that have been on the big screen. This is a version of the hero who has decided that he is willing to kill when he needs to. All in all, it seems to be implied that the death of Jason Todd is what reshaped Batman's morals here and caused him to readjust his code. Not only does he kill, but he also does something even worse in my opinion, branding some of the worst criminals that he fights against with a literal bat brand. These are the criminals that Batman has deemed to have done something completely unforgivable. And the thing is that people in prison in Gotham also know the significance of the Bat brand, meaning that those who end up with one are basically marked for death. The idea here is that the inmates will carry out the death sentence that Batman has marked them with because they know that whatever this person did, it was one of the worst crimes, otherwise they wouldn't have this brand. So not only is there an extra layer of fear, but this also shows a complete disregard for human life. I mean, at least a disregard for human life when it comes to really terrible criminals. Batman wants these criminals to live in fear, and he doesn't care what happens to them in prison. In fact, he kinda hopes that they end up dead. Number 7. Batman the Silenced. One perfect spine-chilling dark multiverse tale that I have loved, which even comes with its own creepy lullaby, is the Tales from the Dark Multiverse Batman Hush. In this story we get a reimagined narrative where Batman's childhood friend, Thomas Elliot, is the one who ends up messing up Bruce's life. Tommy in his adult years allies himself with many of Gotham's villains and more usually anti-hero types after Bruce Wayne ends up in Arkham Asylum, which also was kind of part of his doing. However, Bruce isn't quite as checked out as he's been pretending to be, and he ends up escaping in order to get revenge and taking up the mantle of Batman the Silenced, an alternate version basically of Hush, and of course an alternate version of Batman. Number 6. Vampire Batman. This alternate version of Batman comes to us from the alternate Earth 43. As his moniker describes, he is a version of Bruce Wayne who transforms into a more literal version of Batman when he becomes a vampire. Batman. Get it? Cause vampire bats. Oddly enough, this is also not the only version of Batman in the multiverse that also happens to be a vampire, as you already know, because we talked about Gods and Monsters Batman as well, who's also a vampire. Despite being a vampire on Earth 43, Bruce still fights on the good side, fighting against his vampiric urges to feed on human blood. At least, initially he fights against them. At one point, Vampire Bats asks Alfred to stake him in order to prevent him from giving in to his bloodlust, after he seemingly killed the Joker by draining him of all of his blood. However, a stake through the heart doesn't actually kill Batman here, but simply leaves him in a coma. Months later, Gotham is in a pretty bad place without Batman's presence, and Alfred is forced to awaken him in hopes that Gotham will once more have a savior. Batman does go about taking out criminals, but in a very vampiric way, creating a bloodbath as his time staked and his bodily decay has resulted in the loss of his sanity. So he's there and he's killing criminals, but he's like killing criminals, and it's like a lot. Number 5. The Merciless. This alternate version of Bruce is one who ends up wielding the power of Ares in the memory of Wonder Woman. Oh yeah, and he's also the one who fought with Diana to the very end against Ares before he inevitably was kind of forced to kill her. Or forced in his eyes, but in our eyes we're like, Bruce, don't do that. Don't do it. This alternate version of Bruce Wayne, aka Batman, hails from the dark multiverse of Earth at -42 and is one of the Batman who laughs Dark Knights. To me, he represents Bruce's obsession with power and symbolizes what could very well happen if this was left unchecked. Bruce here loved Diana, but still ended up betraying her because he knew that she would not allow him to keep the power of Ares for himself, and that she would rather destroy such power. So he was like, I gotta hold on to the power because I'm doing great with it, so I guess I gotta kill ya. But also, he wasn't doing that great with it. Spoiler alert. Number 4. The Bruce. This alternate version of Batman comes to us from the reality belonging to Batman I Joker. Here Batman is a tyrant and a symbol who is worshipped as a god. This is not our own Bruce Wayne, by the way, but like a dystopian, almost cyberpunk future version of the character where the people of Gotham see him as their ruler and god. In fact, I don't even know if this guy's name is actually Bruce Wayne or is Bruce at all. I think he's just a person that's elected and like that's the role you play, or that seized power. The people of Gotham worship him and his mission for vengeance. The whole comic is pretty horrifying to read and reveals how even the best of heroic intentions can be perverted over time. Nothing scarier than just humanity and the way that we think things through and can like take a good idea and make it into something a lot more sinister. That's the scariest thing of them all. Well, almost. There's a few more points. Number 3. Murder Machine. Murder Machine is an alternate version of Bruce Wayne who hails from the dark multiverse reality of Earth -44. Here Bruce Wayne turns to his friend and colleague Cyborg for help, building an AI to supplement Alfred after Bruce's longtime friend, butler, and father figure is tragically murdered. However, this AI is programmed to protect Bruce at all costs, which ends up leading the Alfred Protocol, as it's named here, to take over Bruce, replacing his human body with a mechanical, indestructible, and immortal one. Turning Bruce into the murder machine, the Alfred Protocol, which Bruce is now fully merged with, also takes away Bruce's ability to feel fear or sadness. I think you know where this is going. It's not going to a good place. In the end, it labels everyone a threat to Bruce and helps him to kill all those who could potentially harm him, including the entire Justice League. Pretty bleak stuff. Number 2. Nemesis. Nemesis is probably one of the most brutal Batman alternates we've ever encountered. Probably also because he doesn't even hail from DC Comics himself, but instead is a creation of Mark Millar's, who hails from Icon Comics. Mark Millar doesn't hail from Icon Comics, but this character does. Mark Millar does many things. Well, we do have an elaborate backstory for Nemesis, which involves him also seeking vengeance for the death of his parents, but in a much more twisted way. Since his parents were actually the worst kind of wealthy folks and murderers themselves, it's never really even confirmed that this backstory is the true backstory of Nemesis. In fact, it's even implied in the story that Nemesis could actually be multiple people who just cause mayhem and death and destruction because, well, maybe they just enjoy it? The whole idea of the character and everything that he does is pretty messed up and is quite dark. Nemesis provides a much more villainous take on the idea of vigilantes and how motivation can mess you up, or alternatively, how you really don't even need motivation to become a messed up and brutal vigilante in the first place. Also power. Lots of things about power, because that's how it goes. Number 1. Batman Who Laughs. Obviously one of the darkest and scariest alternate versions of Batman out there has to be the Batman Who Laughs. This version of Batman is actually like an amalgamation of Joker and Batman, but he is ultimately an alternate of Bruce Wayne, because he is Bruce Wayne, so a little more Bruce really than Joker in the end. He used to fight crime as Batman, but one day Joker took things too far and caused Batman to snap. And not just snap internally, but externally as well, when he actually snapped Joker's neck, killing him. Joker released a special brand of Joker Venom with his last breath, which Bruce breathed in. Over time, this venom made him paranoid and homicidal, and ultimately he became the villain of the story, going so far as to kill all the members of the Bat family. Knowing they would not be able to join him, or not be willing to join him I guess I should say, well, he killed all of them at least except one. His son Damian Wayne was offered a spot at his father's side, and he ended up taking it. Batman then became the insane Batman Who Laughs and set out to conquer and reshape the entire multiverse. Which definitely means you're pretty scary. If you are like, I'm not just gonna take over this world, I'm gonna like go beyond that, that's a lot.